Started with Creamsicle and White, became Tampa Bay's Pirate legacy.
As they're tearing down the goalpost.
And the Buccaneer way began on the backs of legends. Legends that taught us how to win. This team gave us our first taste of victory.
It is a touchdown! It's picked up! Intercepted!
Leroy Selman. Giles makes the catch.
Touchdown, Tampa Bay!
Today, a familiar foe from the NFC Central is on the horizon.
From Tampa Stadium, it's the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
A rivalry that clashed twice a year across 3 decades. And it all began with names like Selman, Williams, and Wood.
Picked off by Richard Wood.
Today, the fight continues. This is a legacy and a rivalry reborn.
The return of the Creamsicle in Raymond James Stadium unfortunately means the second loss of the season for our Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We are live on YouTube today for a brand new episode of the Cannon Fire podcast following the Buccaneers' 20-6 loss against the Detroit Lions. From top to bottom, I don't know about from top to bottom. We're going to break down some things that did go right today, believe it or not. But from top to bottom, I will say, the Bucs looked like a team that was shaking off the rust after 2 weeks of not playing. Especially on the offensive side of the ball. I think that was probably the biggest disappointment for Tampa Bay today, but kind of the same old story it was in 2022. It seems like you had a defense that for most of the game played well enough for you to be at least in this game, and an offense that really just could not do anything. Probably Baker's worst game as a Buc. Maybe Dave Canales' worst day calling plays as a Buccaneers offensive coordinator. And the rest of those guys on the offense just couldn't shake off the rust. It didn't seem like there was anything that could have gotten the Bucs going today until they finally started to throw the ball deep down the field in the final 5 minutes of the game. So from top to bottom, an embarrassing performance, and they looked like the Creamsicle Buccaneers. I'll give you that much. But Evan, welcome back to another live show. Reeling from just an incredibly disappointing loss, and we're going to break all of it down and then some. We'll also take your calls as the phones are on today, 305-224-1968. Meeting ID for this week is 857-1079-0217. All right, let's get the formalities out of the way. I forgot to do that. I'm so upset about the game. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, joined alongside me, as always, my good buddy and co-host from BucsNation.com, Evan Wanish. How you doing, my friend?
Well, I'm doing better than the Buccaneers offense. You know, it's funny to me. You said it reminded you of the game last year. To me, this did remind me of a game last year, except they didn't have, Tom Brady's heroics to bail them out. Like, reminded me a lot of the Saints game on Monday Night Football last year, the Cardinals game, the Rams game. Just like the offense can't get anything going until the final 5 minutes or so. Reminded me a lot of that. And the first time that the Buccaneers so far this season have been held out of the end zone. So obviously not good enough. And the defense, while, only allowing 20 points and they were on the field for most of the game, partly because they couldn't really get off the field on third down. A lot of third down conversions. Both Lions touchdowns were on third and longs. Can't happen. Just simply can't happen if you want to beat a team that's, that good. And and again, the defense, they didn't have a turnover. Obviously the offense only had the one turnover, but that was a big one, obviously. And it is not really good enough. And I think you're starting to realize now, and I hope, and I want to actually get this out of the way now before we have any callers or anything. You're starting to see now, that I think this team is not the worst team in the NFL, bottom 5, stuff like that. However, they're also not there, right? Not there in terms of being I think a good, legitimately, contender type team. Because the two biggest tests that they had, they failed, right? They failed against the Eagles. They failed against the Lions. Both games weren't particularly close either. So the thing that gets me, and I think part of the reason why so many people get so disappointed, is the Buccaneers start 2-0. Okay, they beat the Vikings and the Bears, 2 teams that are struggling this year. Okay, then people are like, you know what? Like, Philly's coming in. Like, the Bucs could beat Philly. You're riding high. Doesn't happen. You get humbled, right? You get humbled a bit. Then you beat the Saints, and you do it in a pretty convincing fashion in the Saints' house. And then you have a week off. You have a week off to think. And people start to think, the Bucs can beat the Lions. And then the Bucs are going to beat the Lions. And fans just get so confident in that. And, confidence is fine, right? Confidence is fine, but it's like almost like a blind confidence that they work themselves up so much when look, that's not what this team is, and I think before the season, a lot of fans sort of had that idea in their head, had that idea in their head. But then they went 2-0 and you started to maybe believe a little bit and like I said, I don't think the Buccaneers are bad. That's not what I'm trying to say here. It's just then I see an upcoming pocket, right? You see the Falcons coming up. So my predictions, what's going to happen is the Bucs are going to beat the Falcons, and then there's going to be many fans that talk themselves into the Buccaneers beating the Bills, which probably won't happen, and we'll be back to square one again with having to be humbled a little bit. So I do think the Detroit Lions did a little bit of humbling to the Buccaneers today. The Bucs aren't a bad team. They're just not that good. So that's where I'm at.
I'm with you. Today was a disappointing loss in more ways than one. Firstly, just because of the final score, just because of how for most of the game, it didn't seem like there was a lot of fight. There wasn't any juice at all on the offensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay. Baker just could not find a rhythm at all, was overthrowing everybody. There's a lot to break down, but like you had mentioned, this was pretty much the second litmus test the Bucs have had so far this season to test where they are with the rest of the NFL. And we talked about this before these games. If they lose to Philly, nobody's going to hold that against them. When they start 3-1 and obviously build up the hype around this game, it gets flexed. These are two good teams coming into this game, but it was a litmus test for the Bucs to see how they would play against another pretty damn good team. I mean, now, if I'm not mistaken, the Lions are 13-3 over their last 16 games in the NFL, which, they are in the company of Kansas City, San Francisco, some of the elite, Philadelphia, elite teams in the NFL. And it's crazy that we're talking about the Detroit Lions this way, but they are playing like one of the best teams in the NFL, and we clearly saw that today. They just look like the better team all afternoon. They stayed composed, and even when adjustments were tried to be made coming out after the second half, they stuck to what worked. And they were coming into this game, get this, they were coming into this game injured as hell. You're missing, all of these pieces on both sides of the ball. And then early in the game, you lose David Montgomery, who has had quite the career resurgence with Detroit. He goes down. And then we get, what was his name? Reynolds? I'm sorry, who was the next running back who came in?
I honestly don't remember.
Josh Reynolds was a receiver who was
Josh Reynolds was a receiver. There was the one guy that only had a few carries. Has a weird last name. Khalif Raymond got a few carries as well. But honestly, the Lions they didn't really run the ball much anyway. So
yeah, they didn't. And before we talk about the Buccaneers defense, I guess we should just go ahead and get into this game on the offensive side of the ball for Tampa Bay and take a look at some individual stats here in the box score. Let's talk about Baker Mayfield first and foremost, because while we talk about the offense, I said this at the start of the show, but literally, this is the phrase I'm going to use all week. From top to bottom, there was nothing on this offense all day. Nothing. Just nothing. Nothing. It took until the third quarter to get their longest gain of the day, and that was a shot to Chris Godwin in the seam. And it seems like maybe if things had gone another way early in the game, a tipped pass ends up being an interception early in that game. It's hard to blame it on Baker, but at the same time, passes were being tipped at the line of scrimmage all day long, 4 or 5. So that was a continuous issue. If Bake doesn't get that pass tipped, he's potentially got Mike Evans for a 40, 50-yard gain, but it doesn't happen that way. Bucs defense stands tall. They only hold Detroit to 3 points on a 0-yard drive, which you do like to see. But back to the lack of production on offense, it just wasn't there today. 19 for 37, 206 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception for Baker Mayfield. Like I said before, probably his worst game yet in a Tampa Bay Buccaneers uniform.
And I honestly, early on, I didn't think he was that bad. I really didn't. The interception, yeah, you could have thrown it a bit higher. It's tough when it's tipped. It's a tough break. Obviously, yeah, they could have had 6 there for sure, but I didn't think Mayfield was that bad early on. But as the game went on, he got kind of worse. He missed Trey Palmer 2 times for touchdowns, missed Mike Evans on 1. I want to talk about Mike Evans a little bit later, but I didn't think Mayfield was bad early on. Did get worse as the game went on. So I would probably say this is a worse game. I think it was pretty similar to the Philly game. And again, like, that's the thing. Like, that's what this team is going to be. Like, they're going to be able to look decent against mediocre to somewhat decent teams and bad teams, right? Like, they're going to be able to do that. But when it comes to like the top of the conference, the top of the league, they're just not there. And like, okay, that's okay. You know, like that's not like a terrible thing. But it's just the truth, right? It's just the facts. And I again, Baker, I don't think he uses his legs nearly as much this time as he has in the past. I think that hurt a little bit more. You just hope this doesn't become a trend. That's what you have to hope. I think you got to hope that this doesn't become something that, 2 straight games, 3 straight games, the offense starts to struggle, because then, the rails can start to fall off this thing. So, yeah, I thought Baker was fine early on, got worse as the game went on. And yeah, the offense, just like you said, the offense just didn't have any juice. And it never felt like the offense really had a shot every time they had the football. Like, it never felt like they had a shot to do anything with it.
Yeah, and honestly, a big part of why the Bucs failed on offense this game is because of third down. It's crazy, because coming into this, we touted Baker Mayfield and this Buccaneers offense as some of the most efficient offensive playmaking on third down in the NFL. Sorry, words are kind of hard. You know what I'm trying to say here. The Bucs were one of the best teams in the NFL on third down coming into this game. After tonight, 2 for 12 on third down. And that was when, the offense was on the field, because not only were they barely on the field, not only could they not execute when they were on the field, but they barely had the ball. Detroit basically beat the Bucs in a way that the Bucs have beaten some of these lesser teams so far this season. Good ball control football, good conversions on third down. That Bucs defense could not catch a break on third down. And it reminded me of some of the defenses of old, where if it was third and long situation, you almost guaranteed the offense was going to pick it up. I mean, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 15, multiple third and longs today converted by Jared Goff and the Lions offense. Just abysmal. But that's late in the game. That's when those guys are gassed, because they're just on the field for 40 minutes in a game like this. It's not going to produce winning football for Tampa Bay. Now, going back at the offense as we continue to deep dive into what went wrong for the Bucs, the run game. The run game, or the lack thereof. It's crazy, because we talked about time and time again how Dave Canales has said the Bucs are going to be stubborn running the ball, and it felt that way today. It felt even like I was screaming at my TV, why are we running bubble screens and inside handoffs to Keyshawn Vaughn when we're down 14 points? I didn't fully understand the logic behind that. And even the adjustments made after halftime, nothing changed. It was a couple of big plays to start the third quarter for Tampa Bay. I think they caught Detroit reeling, but could not capitalize. Made it to the red zone multiple times. Could not get in the end zone. Rachaad White, 7 carries for 26 yards, averaging 3.7 yards a tote. Keyshawn Vaughn, 6 carries for 9 yards, averaging 1.5. Baker Mayfield had to tuck it and run 2 times, only getting 6 yards, and Devin Tompkins on an end around got 5 yards. No Sean Tucker for another week in a row. So Keyshawn Vaughn now officially taking snaps away from Sean Tucker, who I guess the Bucs don't have that much faith in. But here we are after another week where, less than 20 carries, and even then, I feel like we saw more than enough of the lack of run game for the Bucs in this game.
Saw a lack of Rachaad White. Was there a portion of this game where Rachaad White was benched for Keyshawn Vaughn? Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're trying to figure out what this dude is. You know what Keyshawn Vaughn is. Like, in a critical drive, you gave the ball to Keyshawn Vaughn twice and then threw to him once. What is that? Like, I don't understand what that is. Really quick side note. The NFL no longer unbeaten, as the 49ers and the Eagles have both lost. The Eagles have been defeated by the New York Jets.
Hey,
After Jalen Hurts threw a late interception, then the Jets scored a touchdown, then they just couldn't get it.
They were playing that game in MetLife too, right? Jets were at home. Yes, so Aaron Rodgers on field pregame must have been rubbing some of that magic stuff in the turf.
Yeah. But the offense just it wasn't good enough, and something to monitor. Again, something to monitor. But Baker Mayfield was walking off into the locker room, not moving his left arm. So just something to watch.
So just an update.
Had the sleeve. Didn't have the sleeve on to start the game. Put the sleeve on his left arm, I believe, after the first drive. So
just an update from Baker himself from his press conference. I guess he was just asked about that. As far as his hand, because he did have a bloodied up throwing hand as well for the people who saw that, said the x-rays came back fine, just hurts. So could be a pain tolerance issue moving forward. Baker is a guy that is going to stand in the pocket, going to take those shots, going to play physical, and will probably play through some injury. He took a lot of shots today. Yeah, he did take a lot of shots today. So obviously he's probably going to tough it out and be ready to go for next week. But if we hear anything else injury update related, we will definitely let you guys know.
Yeah, so it's just the offense just wasn't good enough. I thought the offensive line actually played decent. I thought when Detroit was blitzing, they were getting home, which I think that was a big difference in this game. One team blitzes and gets home, the other one blitzes and it's a clean pocket still. It's like they're rushing three, which we'll talk about the defense later. But I thought the offensive line was okay, good enough. I thought they did a good enough job against some pretty good Detroit front. So just some of the receivers couldn't really execute. Mayfield couldn't execute. So just a lot of things. Nothing really went right for the Bucs today on offense.
Before we talk about the play calling to wrap up the offense, I did want to talk about some of those receivers and some of the guys who could not come up today and make a play. And one of those guys is obviously going to be Mike Evans, who... Is this his worst season for dropping the ball so far? Because today...
I mean, he had that one, the Giants game 2015. What do you have, 8 drops in that game? That's probably the worst.
I mean, since then, he's been the definition of automatic for Tampa Bay, and he's been the catalyst for this Buccaneers offense. But even today... they couldn't find him, and when they could, it seemed like half the time he couldn't even catch it. And at the beginning of the year, we talked about how they drew a line in the sand with what his contract demands were, and you even said it yourself after some of those drops against the Eagles. If you want to be paid like a top wide receiver, you can't be dropping passes like you were today. And today, against the Lions, was unfortunately another one of those games for Mike Evans. He did not look like himself out there today.
And yeah, no, he definitely didn't, and that drop was on third down, so big drop there. But one thing I will say, and this is gonna rile some people up or whatever, and this isn't the exact messaging, the words that I'm gonna use. However, I thought his body language today was completely unacceptable. You have that captain's patch on. Right? They just voted on captains, right? You have that captain's patch on. And every time the camera panned to Mike Evans, it looked like he would rather be anywhere else in the world than where he was right there. And I understand you're losing the game. Your offense isn't doing much or whatever. Doesn't matter. You're supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to be a guy who wants to be paid all this money. Go out there and perform and don't pout. So to me, it's unacceptable. If you don't want to be in Tampa Bay, get out. Like if you don't want to be here any longer, request a trade and leave. Don't sit there like a little lost puppy and have a big frown on your face, the entire time. It's honestly like I never see him like even crack a smile, like nothing. Like it just his entire body language. He looks so defeated today. Like if you're that far out of it, dude. Like, ask out. Like, I don't understand why you're acting the way you are. Like, I get it, maybe frustration from the earlier drop. You still got a whole game to play. Like, you got to go out there and go to work. So I just thought his body language today, when he's a leader on this team, he's a veteran leader, got that captain's patch on. I thought it was completely unacceptable. And honestly, the worst I've ever seen it. I've never seen him look just so dejected, so like lost and defeated. I did not find that acceptable.
And Mike Evans, his stat line today, 4 receptions for 49 yards. Chris Godwin, your leading receiver, 6 receptions for 77 yards. Trey Palmer also made a couple of big plays, couple of 20-plus yard receptions for him, 2 catches for 47 yards. Cade Otton, a catch for 15. Rashad White, 3 for 12. Payne Durham back in the rotation after not being active the last few weeks. He had a catch today for 8 yards. So I want to talk about the play calling, and we talk about the wide receivers. I feel like this is a good way to continue the conversation here. There was no juice on the offensive side of the ball for the Bucs today. There was no pushing the ball down the field for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense. Whenever they took shots down the field, unfortunately, Baker was overthrowing everybody. So again, when I say from top to bottom, it was abysmal on offense today, that doesn't just mean Baker. That doesn't just mean Mike Evans. Doesn't just mean Dave Canales. It means in every facet, the offense today sucked. And it was insane to me how obviously the urgency is going to pick up at the end of the game, and the Bucs want to go out there and maybe execute something to make that final score not look as bad. But the most movement we saw from the offense today was when they finally started throwing the ball down the field, when you finally started looking for Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And I know Mike had a couple of those catches today, and Chris Godwin ultimately had 6 catches. But I feel like both of those guys got at least 2 or 3 of those catches on the day in the final 2 offensive possessions for Tampa Bay. I don't know what the philosophy was for Dave Canales coming into this game, but you had 2 weeks to come up with something that was going to look better than what we saw ultimately. You know, there isn't anything I can say that ultimately means more than that statement right there. Dave Canales had 2 weeks to prepare for this Lions defense, and he crapped the bed. And he's going to tell you that. He'll be the first guy to tell you that. That's what I do really like about Dave Canales. This is another game where he's going to take his lumps, he's going to learn, and he's going to continue to adjust. He's humble enough to admit that he had a bad day today, but I mean, realistically, play calling, again, like I said, some of the worst play calling this season. Maybe worse than the Eagles game.
Yeah, it was, I mean, the 3rd and 1 fade to Mike Evans.
We took 2 deep shots today on 3rd. It was 3rd and 1, the fade shot to Mike Evans looking for an OPI. And then later in the game on 3rd and 2, he overthrows a wide open Trey Palmer. Why are we playing for the home run? Just get the yards. Just get the yards. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. And bandwagoner in the chat said those 2 Palmer misses hurt. They definitely did. He said Brady was overthrowing too, though. That's Tom Brady. Like it's Tom Brady. Okay,
and you know what? I've said before on this podcast that like the overthrows, it's going to take time, and I still think it's going to take a few more weeks for Baker to really get dialed in, to build that chemistry up all the way, to know the difference of a deep shot. The velocity,
but you are running out of time.
Right. You know, Trey Palmer, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, when he didn't have the pressure right on top of him and he's taking a hit as he lets go of the ball, he was overthrowing some guys. I still think the play calling was awful today. I mean, there was no attempt to push the ball down the field. And even when the Bucs had to step up the urgency and they're playing down 2 possessions, we're still throwing bubble screens that lose 2 yards. We're still running right up the A-gap with Keyshawn Vaughn for no reason. Like, it just seems some of it felt pointless, and all of it certainly felt flat.
Well, and also, you know, where was the, the misdirection? Where was the, like a lot of that stuff? The play action. You didn't see a lot of it. And this game, honestly, like, yeah, sure, the final score is 20-6. This game was in reach for most of it. Like, most of this game was completely in reach. It's not like this game got out of hand early. You know, it's not like you were down 20 points at halftime. So it's just not a good enough day. Not good enough. And every team in the division lost. G Vegas brings up a point. He said this is the worst case scenario. Bucs could win the division with a bad team, but everybody else in the division will get favorable draft position. I think a lot of people are sort of hurt by this. And again, it goes back to the point where I say just the expectations, I think, for this team. To me, they're pretty average. I think they're a pretty average team. I don't think they're bad because, if you were bad, you lose to the Vikings, you lose to the Bears. But I also don't think they're like particularly good because if you're good, all right, maybe the Eagles, even though the Eagles lost today, Eagles have struggled. They've been winning, but they haven't been winning clean. All right, yeah, you lose that game. But like today's game, like your defense only gave up 20 points. Like, if you're a good team, you find a way to win that game. And they're not that team. And I think that the quicker and sooner people realize that, the more easier it will be to digest these losses.
The biggest feeling I come away from this game with is obviously disappointment, but most of the reason for that disappointment is because we had talked about how when they lost to the Eagles early in the year, nobody was really going to hold that against them, right? Nobody expected them to win against the Eagles. Now, they did have a better than expected start, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so it led to the increased hype around this game. But if the Bucs would have lost to the Lions but made it a competitive game, I still don't think a lot of people would be as down about this loss. But this was just another one of those games where you compare yourself to one of the better teams in the NFC,
and it's not close.
And they got embarrassed. I mean,
because they're, as a football team, they're not close.
Right.
Like that's just what it is. You know, as a team, they're not as close as fans want them to be. And honestly, that's okay though, to me. Like, because that just because you're not close, that doesn't mean you're only going to win 3 games. Like that doesn't mean they're going to go winless the rest of the year. You know, people just takes always 2 extremes. They go, you're either the worst team in the NFL or you're really good. No, there's a middle ground. Like the Bucs will probably, like, they're gonna win 6, 7, 8 games. Like it's gonna be in the 6 to 8 range. Like it's what it's gonna be this year. We'll see if that can win the division. Obviously, yeah, all 3 division teams lost today. The Bucs already have a division win, so that helps their thing. And I get the fans that like to make the playoffs, because you're in the playoffs, right? Only 6 teams get in. You are in the playoffs. I get that. Be a 4th straight year that they go into the playoffs. However, I also understand the fans that are looking at it from the other side, being like, okay, you make the playoffs. This is what you do against good teams. In the playoffs, you're going to be playing good teams. So you're not going to win a playoff game. So, like, why waste your time? I understand both sides of it. I do get it. But it's just, there's a long season. There's a lot of football left to be played. It's just, I think you're starting to find out what exactly this team is. And it's looking more and more, even though the record's 3-2, it's above 500, looking more and more like it's an average football team. Like, that's just the fact. When you beat the bad teams but lose to the good teams, you fall in the middle. Like, that's average. And I think that's where the Bucs are right now. It does appear that Rhett is muted, so we have a caller here.
My bad. I forgot to unmute my mic. We got our first call of the show. What's your name? Where are you calling in from?
Hey, what's up, guys? It's Richard T from the West Coast.
What's up, Richard? How you feeling, bud?
I feel like I just got mauled by a lion.
The Bucs offense did.
Yeah, I think the whole defense, or the whole team, not just the offense. I mean, defensively, couldn't stop them on 3rd down. Offensively, couldn't convert, couldn't get anything going. They got shut out with no touchdowns, guys.
Mm-hmm.
At home. Feel like the Saints.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculous. But look, point is that the new offense, new scheme, it's new offensive coordinator who's never called offensive games before. These are the growing pains that we were expecting to see. Fortunately, it hit hard on the day when there was a lot of hype going into this week, with the game being flex, with it being Creamsicle week. I think the NFL said it's the first game this season where it's two division leaders going head to head. That's tough. It really is. We went to this game and it really that's the best plan that we came up with in 2 weeks. Rhett, you said something like that. At the same time, I honestly feel like it wasn't as bad as we're all taking it. I think some of the, maybe this is me being positive or an optimist, but yeah, Dave Canales will probably admit that he didn't have the best play calling day, but at the same time, if we just connected on some of those plays, it'd be a different game. Early on, that interception that got batted up, that would have went to Mike Evans. He was wide ass open.
Yeah, that would have been 50-plus yards, and that would have set the tone for the game. It would have set the tone for the offense. It potentially could have been the biggest play of the day as far as a yardage standpoint. There's a lot that potential completion could have done, and it almost reminds me of that mishap in Carolina last season with Mike Evans dropping the ball on the third play from scrimmage. After that, it was like the offense was dejected. Now, I'm not going to say that that's what happened today, but that's certainly what it felt like by them just not putting anything on the field.
Yeah, I thought of the same thing too. But really, where was the will? I mean, I'm not saying that they didn't have the will to try to play, but the Lions players, their will was way greater than the Buccaneers players, And that's how you beat those kind of key plays, right? That play would have worked, but it didn't because the defensive line or the Lions defense was able to impact the pass and got a turnover.
Yeah, that wasn't the only time they were affecting the pass at the line of scrimmage. The Lions' defensive front was able to get their hands on the football maybe 4 or 5 different times today, deflecting the pass from Baker and just causing more disaster.
Yeah, but you can play the if game though all you want,
Sure. Yeah.
What if the Vikings didn't have 3 turnovers in the first half week 1? Do the Buccaneers lose to the Vikings? So it can go on both ways. Yeah. If the Buccaneers hit if they hit the big plays, but they didn't. Like at the end of the day, like they didn't. So the Lions did. The Lions 2, like I said, 3rd and longs. Both touchdowns came on 3rd and long. The Lions made the plays that the Bucs just didn't.
Yeah, at the end of the day, we simply got outcoached, we got outwilled, and we got outlucked. On the Bucs defense side, we got a couple of those hands-on balls too, but they didn't bounce our way.
Yeah.
For us to make an interception, there was 2 or 3 opportunities, but we're just a body away, an arm length away. But my point is that it's growing pains, like I said, and it's going to take time. And it's not like the team totally sucks. We're still in first place, and we still have a long season, right? Look at all the hype that the Lions are getting this season. The first half of the year last year, they were gaga. They were doing nothing.
They were
together for them.
Dan Campbell, when he became head coach for Detroit, their first 12 games on the road, they went 0-11-1. They didn't win a single game on the road until the very end of that second season, under Dan Campbell. And the turnaround that he's had has been remarkable. Like, nobody is saying that the Lions are not a good team. And like you said, you alluded to the fact that they did a good job of outcoaching the Buccaneers coaching staff today. So got to give credit where credit is due. Dan Campbell has done a really good job of turning around that Lions team. And ultimately, after this week, I mean, maybe people are going to discredit them because they beat a Bucs team that isn't as good as everybody thought. But the Lions, week after week, are turning into a contender. And they're just playing good football. They were definitely playing better football than Tampa today.
No, they're playing good football. And, the thing about the Lions, too, is that they have depth. I mean, this may sound familiar, but I mean, that was an organization that's been at the bottom of the NFL, always drafting high picks year after year after year, getting quality players right out of college. And it just took a piece or two to start turning things around. Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying is that we're kind of on that track, right? We're probably at the beginning of that track. But it's going to take time for us to put things together. And we just got to hope that it's not so bad where it's going to start causing, turnovers in the coaching staff and things like that. I, for one, really like what I'm seeing from Dave Canales. It's just not coming together quite yet. And I think that's really more on the execution of the players than it is like making bad calls, because I really do feel that some of those key plays, you turn those plays around, it'd be a different outcome. And instead of us bitching and whining about how we lost today, we'd be celebrating on a good win, on a good creamsicle day, first day off the bye being 5-1 or 4-1. But, not the case today. It's not the end of the world.
No, you're right. It is not the end of the world. And it's going to be interesting to see how this Bucs team will bounce back, because they have faced adversity before this season, and they came back and they beat the Saints the following week. So it'll be interesting to see the adjustments that are made, not only from this Bucs team, but from the coaching staff as well, headed into next week. Richard, good talking to you, my friend. We're going to get to some other calls, but we'll talk to you again soon. Go Bucs, pal.
Go Bucs. West Coast.
West Coast. Let's get some more people in here. We got a couple of other people who have been holding for a while. This next caller from the 770. We appreciate you holding on for so long. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. No problem.
What's up, man? What's your name? How you feeling?
Ken. This is Corey from Nashville.
Corey, what's up, dude?
What's up, man? Okay, I called after we beat the Saints, right? And I said, because of our history with the Saints, I wasn't quite sure, how to respond to the game. Because I didn't know what kind of team we were going to be coming out of the bye week. Did we turn a corner? So I kind of feel the same way today, because that game, the definition of that game, the equality of that game is missed opportunities. I mean, Baker said it in his post-game presser. Every big play was there. It was there. We didn't execute. And against a good team, you have to execute, because guess what happens? Eventually, they will. I thought for the better part of that game, we were pretty much even teams, just keeping it honest. I mean, the score was 3-3, and we gave up 2 touchdowns on 3rd and long. Cannot happen. I'm completely over the Ryan Neal experiment. I saw better IQ from D. Delaney, quite frankly.
He was awful today. I was going to talk about that at some point, but I was infuriating. It was infuriating to see how often he was the reason a play broke down. He was Chris Conte bad today.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, ghost of Conte's past, Chris's past. But it's just the almost that frustrates me. If we go, we play Detroit, or we play Philly. Like the Philly game, the plays weren't there. I think it was just too early in the season. Canales, we still didn't quite have a rhythm. It was just a little early. We played a really, really good team come off a really, really good run. But to me, Philadelphia showed a lot of flaws, and we exploited them for about 2 quarters if you want to total up the game. And then for the rest of that, we got our flaws exposed. But we got to harp on the positives, because that was only our 5th game, right? We're still number 1. We're still outright in first place of the division because of, thank God for the Commanders and the Texans. Never thought I would say that ever, but thank God for them. And the plays were there, guys. I'm frustrated like everybody else in Bucs Nation. We looked good while losing. I tell you that. At least we looked good. But the plays were there. There was a little bit of stubbornness from Canales that he has to work out. If you saw Ben Johnson's play calling in that second half, they just completely went away from running the football. They went away from it. It wasn't working, and Jared Goff got in a really nice rhythm. I think Canales has to learn that. He looked like a first-year play caller, and it's hard to beat him up when we did have explosives there and we didn't execute those explosives. There are 2 touchdowns on 3rd and longs. That's lack of execution. And like Todd Bowles said, was coverage bust. There's a very explosive offense, and I thought the defense held them to 17 and got 3 off a tipped ball and an interception. So that the 17 mark is what we wanted. The problem is the offense 2 for 12 on 3rd down, and we've been really good on 3rd down this year. I just think we went away from what made us really good. And if we're going to play Keyshawn Vaughn so many snaps, I already put this all over Twitter. We're not going to get a premier running back. That's fine because we can't afford one. But go get Zach Moss. Go get Zach Moss out of Indianapolis. They paid all that money to Jonathan Taylor, not for him to split carries. Zach Moss just came out hot, and Taylor was coming off a major injury. But they kind of split today, got blown out. fine. Go get him. Just give a fifth-round pick for him or something. Go get him because I don't want to see Keyshawn Vaughn getting 20+% of my snaps. It's just not going to work.
Speaking of getting some playmakers to help this team out, we did get a $2 super chat from our buddy Mr. Bucks Nation. Says the Bucks need to sign some veterans to compete, and he put a little winky face there at the end of that because that's what everybody's go-to point is when we look at some of the roster holes the Bucks have. But I do agree. I think looking at the running back room that we have, week one, if everybody stayed healthy and you want to have faith in this running back room, then so be it. And it still is somewhat early in the season. New offensive system, some new personnel, right? New role for Rachaad White, getting more work than he's ever gotten. But today he was pretty scarce. And maybe that tells me the Bucks don't have all the faith in him to be a 3-down back. So just like you said, with Chase Edmonds still on the mend and Keyshawn Vaughn very clearly not the guy, and Rachaad White just not getting the sample size in a game like today to prove that he can or cannot be the guy, I definitely think they're going to maybe have to address some positions here soon. Now, it's not going to be a stud they go and sign. We've said that before. It's not going to be some tenured veteran, a name that everyone's going to know.
But Henry or none of that, yeah.
Perfect situation, just like you said, though, is Zach Moss, a guy who has now been overshadowed by the return of Jonathan Stewart, maybe potentially looking for a change of scenery. Who knows? The trade deadline just a couple of weeks away. But, Corey, any last points before we let you go, my friend?
I want to harp on the fact that the plays were there. The plays were there. But execution at this level, pro sports, I coach basketball. I can get away with things at certain levels. But as a pro, you can't get away with that many missed opportunities. That's all I want to say. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you, Corey. Always appreciate you calling in. And a great point that I'll echo here, too. You cannot miss those opportunities against a good team. Like we said the same thing about the Eagles. The drop touchdown pass from Mike Evans, stuff like that. You can miss these opportunities when you're playing the Bears and potentially the Vikings and maybe the Saints, who are now, 1-4, 1-5 over their first 6 games. You can maybe get away with some of that stuff against them. But when you go into a game that is, again, considered a litmus test for where you are, where you rank among some of the NFL's best teams, you just cannot let that stuff happen. $2 super chat from our buddy Drifts924, a first-time super chat, by the way. Says, how do you call in? We'll take some more calls at the end of the show. We do have a lot of people on hold. We appreciate your patience. 305-224-1968. Meeting ID is 857-1079-0217. Let's talk about the defense before we take another set of calls and wrap this thing up. I know that what I said before is a lot of what I'm going to say here again. This felt like a game from 2022 where you have a defense that was good enough to win for the most part. And then ultimately by the third quarter, they're just gassed and they cannot get themselves off of the field. Time of possession, Detroit absolutely dominated the Bucs. They held the ball for close to 40 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. 2/3 of the game with their defense being out there is not going to be enough to produce winning football. But the way the defense started, I can't say a lot of terrible things about them. It was the quick interception in the first quarter. You give up 3 points, but you give up 3 points on a 0-yard drive. I mean, the Lions got the ball in the red zone pretty much 7 yards.
On the 10-yard line, pretty much.
Yeah, and they got 0 yards. And that's good. It puts your offense in a situation to go out there the next drive, make up from their mistakes, and still potentially get the lead back. Like, that's the thing, too, is that, there were a lot of opportunities there, kind of like Corey said, for the offense to come in and save the day, and they simply did not. But by the end of this one, the defense was gassed, could not get off of the field. And they broke down in that second half. Jared Goff and the Lions offense were certainly having their way.
Yeah, I'm going to look at 2 things. I didn't think the defense played bad. The one thing, though, no turnovers, which is important. And then the lack of pass rush. And, I mean, I talked about it. I alluded to it a little earlier. When the Lions were blitzing, the Lions were making an impact, right? It was affecting the Bucs offense. When the Bucs blitzed, all it did was leave an open guy. They're just... This pass rush, it's starting to look like this pass rush may not be it. Like honestly, like Shaq Barrett's kind of quiet. Like Shaq Barrett did not do much at all today. Vita Vea didn't have as strong of a game pass rushing as he has this year. George Shawinka made a play or two. The Bucs' best defender, I think, was Kalijah Kancey, which, like, don't get me wrong, that's a great sign. Like, that's a fantastic sign. But when he's your best defender, That's not what you want to see, particularly, so they just don't have the pass rush, especially against these top tier offenses. And the Lions offense, okay, it's not a top 5 offense, but I'd say it's a good unit. They don't have the guys to do it. And what happens is you don't have the guys to rush for 4. So then you blitz. And even when they were blitzing, though, they weren't getting home. When you pick up a blitz, Jared Goff, a veteran, is going to find the open man all day long. And that's exactly what they did. And I agree with the caller, actually, Corey, talking about Ryan Neal. Yeah, I thought Ryan Neal was just atrocious today. It seemed like they were, targeting him. Thought Jamel Dean had a pretty good day. Carlton Davis pretty quiet, but yeah, I mean, Ryan Neal seemed like every time there was a play, he was involved in it. And the Bucs, I don't understand why they played so much zone coverage. Like, I don't know if they thought the Lions were just going to keep going over the top and deep shots and stuff, but man, oh man, the Lions were just picking apart their zone. And when you don't have an effective enough pass rush, a veteran quarterback like Jared Goff is going to find that hole in the zone 9 times out of 10, and that's exactly what he did today. So while the defense wasn't the reason they lost, right? It wasn't the reason they lost. There was definitely, and 20 points isn't bad, right? Like on the surface, only giving up 20, basically 17, because just like the caller said, the interception, you're already there. It's not bad, but they still did leave a lot to be desired, especially when your offense was struggling, sure, but your offense also, you need to stop. You need to give the ball back to your offense, and time again, you just did not get off the field. And like I said, both touchdowns coming on 3rd and longs. Cannot happen. Just can't happen.
I am glad you brought up Kalijah Kancey because I wanted to highlight his play today. People have been waiting for him to show up, and kind of like Vita Vea, dealt with injuries that rookie year, and it took him a little while to really come on. Kalijah Kancey played a little bit week 1, has not played since. This was his first game back, got a healthy amount of snaps. I don't want to overreact, and I don't think I am overreacting, but his presence on the defensive line was more than noticed. And I think where it was noticed the most today was in the run defense for Tampa Bay. The run defense for the Bucs outside of the Eagles game has been pretty good. They are going back to the run defense they were known for in 2019, 2020, early 2021, and then eventually teams were able to figure it out and run the ball on them. But today they look stout. And I know that David Montgomery going down, the second quarter is going to hurt Detroit, but aside from that, they had less than 40 yards rushing on the day. They controlled the football. They played with the lead, and coming into this game, they were one of the better rushing teams in the NFL. And I do think that Kalijah Kancey, being an extra body in that rotation, he's a good run defender to have in the middle of the line. And I like a lot of what I saw from him today.
I thought he's good. He made an impact early and often. You can see the potential, I think, with him as a pass rusher. And, he flagged. There was actually a few times where he got held, I thought. So there was a few times where he had won his rep, but just didn't get through. And, really encouraging sign. I mean, he's played 2 games so far. Well, basically a game and part of a game. He's the Minnesota thing. He wasn't very long.
I mean, 10 snaps.
So far so good. You just hope he stays healthy, because obviously health so far has been an issue for him this year. So you hope there's nothing else that pops up that would cause him to miss any more time, because he's a pretty critical piece for the Bucs' future.
Yeah, 2 tackles and a sack, his first career sack in his first full career game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All right, we're going to try and clear out some of these phone lines. We got a lot of people waiting on hold, so we do appreciate you guys. From the 727, been waiting on hold for close to 45 minutes. We do appreciate your patience. Can you hear me? What's your name? Where are you calling in from?
It's Matt Diaz. Wow, have I been on the line for 45 minutes? I'm calling from Tampa.
What's up, Matt? How you doing, my friend?
Good. Yeah, now, the Bucs today, my fantasy team got wrecked because I also have 2 Bucs on there, but yeah. Awesome in spite of getting slashed by a Lions today.
It's all right. I had a prize pick 6-leg parlay, and I got 4 out of 6. I would have got 5 out of 6 if I got a Chris Godwin or Mike Evans touchdown today. I was feeling pretty confident about that headed into the game, and unfortunately that let me down. So I feel your pain.
Yeah. But yeah, since we're talking about defense, I mean, it's one of those. I mean, one aside from our edge rushers, I mean, I think Logan Hall is turning into a pretty underrated. He's more of a workman type of guy, but I mean, Vita's done what Vita does, and then Kalijah Cansey, I mean, pretty good start, especially considering he had that calf injury.
Yeah, he's barely played at all.
I mean, maybe JTS and Yaya's flame broiled chicken can finally start getting some sacks, but yeah, I'm a little. I find a lot of the plan and pass defense. I know Jared Goff is playing really nice, but he's no Justin Herbert, who's got just this really nice deep ball downfield. And I mean, yeah, they have some good skill position players, but I mean, I think they need to be playing more aggressively man to man, because now you'll probably get deep occasionally, but if it puts the offense back on the field sooner where they could desperately get some points, that could have really helped during this game. As far as just offense, well, there wasn't anything good there.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of this game...
Short and sweet.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can say, really, about the offensive side of the ball. But on the defensive side, by the end of this game, it was just methodical how they were being picked apart. That soft zone that you brought up, Jared Goff playing well against the blitz, because Todd Bowles definitely dialed up the heat today. It was just a lot of stuff that ultimately did not end up working. And I will say that the defense kept the Bucs in the game longer than they deserved to be. I'll say it that way, too. But it is incredibly unfortunate to see them come up short like that.
To 2020 when the Rams came to town, where, I mean, he was just getting off just quick little completions.
Yeah.
It seemed like, too, they just stopped running the ball.
Well, the key to what Detroit did today was they spread out the Buccaneers defense. And I heard the commentator put it in a great way that's easy to understand. All they were trying to do on offense, the Lions, they wanted Vita Vea, all those big interior defensive linemen, all your strong linebackers, they wanted them to have to run the furthest to make the play. And then they wanted your corners, your smaller personnel, to be the guys who have to be the first wave of tacklers. And it just didn't work. And we've seen it time and time again against this Todd Bowles defense, where if a team starts throwing bubble screens, or if they have time in the pocket to develop some route outside of the numbers, or even play action, roll out Jared Goff and get him throwing outside of the numbers, if you can spread out this Buccaneers defense, that's when you're going to beat them. And between playing soft zone and obviously some of the outside concepts we saw from the Lions on offense, it was just the same exact thing every time. It was methodical, and it was definitely annoying by the end of the game.
It was almost just the exact opposite of the offense. And I mean, I'll say this with the offense. I mean, our guys, I mean, they were getting a lot of the same opportunities that Detroit got, but they just didn't execute. And I mean, play calling wasn't great. But I mean, well, that was one thing I wanted to see was, why aren't we trying some of those screens? I mean, I get they're doing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I almost felt like they were trying the screens too much today. We saw a lot of short concept stuff from the passing game, a lot of screen passes, and just not a lot of trying to push the ball downfield. And ultimately, I feel like that's what led to a lot of the issues today. I mean, the play calling wasn't great when, the players were able to catch the ball, but execution errors piled on top of that was just, it led to the entire mess that we saw there today. But Matt, any final thoughts before we let you go, my friend? We got to clear out the rest of these phone calls.
Yes. Well, now I'll say this before I go. I'm going to go against the grain here. I don't think they should stop running the ball. The only way it's going to get better is by running the ball. Now, I mean, to me, this whole game was just, it says where the Bucs are. Like, I think they're a 9-win team, but, with 9 wins, there's going to be 8 losses that are going to make you wave your fist. So to me, this is just, whereas the Lions, I honestly think they're a contender.
Yeah, I think the Lions are definitely a good team, and they proved that today, for sure. Definitely left the Bucs in a position that I wasn't expecting them to be in, but a loss is a loss, and you just got to shake it off and move on. But, Matt, always good talking to you, my friend. Go Bucs, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for calling in, my friend. All right, we got some more people. Next call from the 808. We appreciate you hanging on. Thank you for your patience. You are now on the Cannon Fire podcast. What's your name? Where are you calling in from?
The 808. We appreciate you hanging on. Thank you for your patience. You are now on the Cannon Fire podcast. What's your name?
Hello, hello.
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 Can you hear me?
You there? Yes, sir. How you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm a huge Bucs fan. I'm stationed in Hawaii right now, so I wake up early to watch the football games.
Hell yeah,
Awesome.
dude. Well, we appreciate you hanging out with us. I know it's still kind of morning time for you over there. Sorry you had to wake up and watch what we just watched, but how you feeling after that one?
Oh man, there's a lot of Lions fans at the bar I went to. It's just
and they're cocky too, which is incredibly out of character. I know a lot of Detroit fans who are awesome people, but man, they are talking all types of crap this year.
Oh no, I think it's the younger Lions fans, because at the bar there was a lot of older Lions fans that were pretty just happy to see their team finally being good.
Yeah.
So obviously, in Hawaii, are you the only Bucs fan in Hawaii? I know you said you were stationed there. Are you there for work, or you in the military?
I'm in the Navy. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Me and my roommate were on a ship together. He's actually a Saints fan, so
thank you for your service.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's oh my gosh, I mean, I've been a fan since they drafted Jameis in Florida State, and I don't want to say I'm getting flashbacks, but it's just I don't think Baker's that bad, but it's just it's frustrating to see my favorite wide receiver, Mike Evans, drop all those passes after he wants a contract, and I think we were just so close. And honestly, I think I'd rather have D. Delaney play than Ryan Neal. He looked like he was just giving up too many big plays.
Yeah, you're not the first caller to suggest that. And if Ryan Neal keeps playing the way he is, I think the Bucs might consider that as well. We'll see.
Yeah, D. Delaney been a pleasant surprise. One of the higher graded DBs in the NFL this year.
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask what you guys thought about Baker Mayfield and how he played today.
Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead, Rhett.
No, you're good. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there.
No. Go ahead.
I thought it was his worst game as a Bucs QB. Even then, in the beginning of the game, it didn't seem so bad, like Evan had said. But as the game went on, it just ultimately seemed like he got worse. Couldn't hit any of those deep passes, wasn't able to be on target at the end of the game. That final drive, I know he was under a lot of pressure. He was taking a lot of hits, and he's the type of QB who's going to stand in the pocket and take those hits. But even that final drive for the Bucs, when they were making that push downfield, he couldn't hit anybody. I mean, it was a bad look, and definitely not going to help his completion percentage after today. He was right around 50%, but a physical QB, and I definitely think he has what it takes to bounce back and continue to show us a lot of the good we have seen this year. But today for him and the rest of the offense, it was nobody looked right today.
Yeah, I agree. I just think the thing I'm most concerned with is I know we don't have a lot of cap space, and I know they said it earlier, but the running backs. I just when the season started, after watching Rachaad White in the last preseason game, I just thought he was gonna bring more than what he's brought so far this season. And I don't know if it's his fault or the offensive line, so that's why I was going to ask you whose fault. Like, who do you think's more at fault for our rushing game, is the offensive line or the running backs?
Evan, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I don't really think you can pin it solely on one or the other. Because at the end of the day, if there's zero holes for the running back to find, because the offensive line can't execute and open those holes, I don't care who you are. It doesn't really matter, who you are. But at the same time, there's running backs, vision, patience, burst, and that's stuff that I think at times Rachaad White lacks. Now, the patience sometimes is too much patience. That's one of the things, and it is starting to look. And I think I talked about this on the last episode too. I am starting to get a little bit concerned that, and this is the purpose of the season, for the Buccaneers to get answers on these guys to see if they're part of the long-term plan. But it's starting to look like Rachaad White is just a guy, right? It doesn't look like he's the guy. It looks like he's just another guy. So that can be pretty easily replaced. So I am not completely out. Still a lot of football to be played, and also I'm not completely blaming Rachaad White, because again, it takes two, right? You have to, and also the scheme, the play calls when you run, it has a lot to do with it. But so far through 5 games, Rachaad White has not been what I'm sure the Bucs hoped, and definitely not been what the fans hoped.
I will say this about Rachaad White. I am not ready to wave the white flag and declare him another guy. And I know that's not what you were saying, but it definitely looks like that.
It's trending in that direction.
Right. After the first 5 weeks of the season, he isn't giving us very much hope as, the new savior of that running back room. But I definitely think the sample size has a lot to do with it. I mean, one of the biggest complaints we had with him today is that he wasn't even on the field. You got Keyshawn Vaughn taking away carries from potentially Rachaad White, but now Sean Tucker, who is even bigger question mark now. But I think if you give Rachaad White, one game where you just give him the ball 25 times and you throw the ball at him 5 to 7 times, maybe he shows us a little bit more. I mean, it obviously matters week to week, depending on the defense you go up against. But I still think there's a level that he can get to that he hasn't quite hit yet. And I still have a little bit of faith in the guy. I would like to see what the rest of this season brings up. But just like Evan said, this is the season for being patient with guys like Rachaad White, with guys like, unfortunately, Keyshawn Vaughn, with some of these guys who have been slower to develop. When you're not in a championship window, you still want to win games, and the Bucs are still focused on winning their division. But it's not like you have a bunch of depth behind these unexperienced guys. So you got to figure out what you have long-term for sure. And I'm still in on the Rachaad White project, but I definitely would like to see him get involved a little bit more if the Bucs truly want him to be, that next running back for Tampa Bay. But we appreciate your call from Hawaii, man. Any final thoughts before we let you go?
I just want to say the future is looking bright for Kalachi Kant if he can stay healthy. And I appreciate what you guys do. Go Bucs. Thanks.
Oh, yeah, buddy. Go Bucs. Thank you for listening. We truly do appreciate you. All right. Final call of the show from the 352. And this guy has been on hold forever. I think he's in our YouTube live chat, so forgive me if I'm mistaken, but is this Dritz? Is that how you say it? Hello? Going once, going twice. You're on the Cane and Fire podcast.
One, two.
Hello. I feel so bad. He's been on hold for
I know.
an
It's
hour,
our last
dude.
caller.
Last call of the show. Going once, going twice. Hello. Power Pig, hello. Can you hear me? I'm burning. All right. Sorry, pal. We appreciate you calling in. Maybe next time. But we got to wrap this thing up. We've gone a little bit long today. And this is not one of those games that you want to talk about for a long time. I don't think. I mean, maybe not for me.
Well, based on the amount of calls, the fans do. So
yeah, that is true. A lot of people with a lot of things to say this week, and we truly appreciate all of you guys who chose to call in, chose to hang out with us live on YouTube, chose to subscribe to the channel this week. We did have a really, really good week as far as YouTube numbers go. I don't know if you guys saw, but our interview on the game preview with NFL safety Glover Quinn and Jack Kavanaugh from Believe in Lions, that episode's up almost over 8,000 views, which is absolutely incredible to see something like that. Especially an episode that I didn't really expect to pop off like that. So we do appreciate your guys' support and everybody.
We have well over 100 in the live chat today. So just, we appreciate the support so much. It means a lot. So, And even after a loss, we always say, well, when the team's doing good, the numbers are going to be up. But if they lose, and sometimes it works the other way. Sometimes when they lose, like people want to talk about it more. So we appreciate it, everything.
Yeah, we try to keep it level-headed around here. So if you guys call in and you have an insane emotional take, that's what we're here for. That's what the Cannon Fire Hotline is open for on shows like this. But ladies and gentlemen, with all of that being said, that's just about going to do it for this week's episode of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Post-game call-in edition. I don't even know if we have a gimmick name for the episode at this point, but that's going to do it for this game review. Follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And, of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. You can follow my co-host, Evan, on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL. And check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got in the hopper this week?
Obviously, you're going to do the game day after reactions, and then also going to be coming up with a new Q&A for the Falcons coming up. So obviously, be on the lookout for that.
Our buddy Dritz in live chat. I feel so bad for him.
We'll get you next time, Dritz. We'll get you next time.
You know what? Next time we have the phones on, you'll be the first call that we take. I promise. Because I recognize your number now. I know the area code. So I'm so sorry. He was on hold for so long. But it's a dirty game, man. It's a dirty game. Sometimes that's what happens. Last but not least, you can find myself on Instagram and Twitter at Retticus, RHETTAKUS. If you follow me, I will follow you back. Subscribe to the Cannon Fire Podcast here on YouTube for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content. If you guys are a new viewer, we do appreciate you and look forward to your company as we move forward. We'll talk to you later this week as we get you up to date on all the latest Tampa Bay Buccaneer news updates and any more info that you may need between now and then. Right here, youtube.com/Cannon Fire Podcast. Be on the lookout for that. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish. We'll talk to you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thank you again for listening, and go Bucs.